Hello and welcome to you all. Thank you for the people who have turned up early for this event. That's absolutely fantastic. So I hope you are all going to enjoy it. We've got a couple of minutes yet. We've got 60 people booked on, so waiting for quite a few more to join us today for this session. But before we start, it would be good to hear from you, and you can put this in on the chat or come and talk to us. But what would you like to get out of this session? Obviously, this session is around building relationships. So this session is going to be an interactive session. I hope everybody's okay with that. But what would you like to get out of today? So at the end of this session, what would you have wanted to achieve? And I'd like you to put that in the chat, please. Or come and talk to us. So I've got a couple of minutes before we start this. Everybody settle down. I've actually got a cup of tea here because it's very cold in North Wales today. I'm trying to keep my hands warm. Okay, challenges and clashes. I presume is that within internal teams? Yeah, okay, brilliant. Okay, well, we can sort that one out. It's good. So for the people who are joining us at the moment, before we start this session, it would be good to get to know from you, what would you like to achieve from at the end of this session? So what would good look like to you? What are you hoping to get from this session? Obviously, this is around managing, building relationships, both internal and external. And obviously this can be hard. This can be a tough one. Managing a team and becoming part of a team. Staying in relationships. Okay, different areas of the NHS. Yeah, absolutely. We're going to be covering that. But that really helps me. Yeah, how to build wider connections across the ICS. Brilliant. The civilian environment. Okay, so that's reaching out to people in your communities, I'm assuming. John? Navigating different work relationships. So I've got a few people wanting more on the internal, a little bit more on the external. Tools to help build relationships, external stakeholders. Yes, that's a really difficult one with, when you're new in the role. Absolutely. But we will cover that. That's lovely. Okay, so I'm going to start sharing my screen. Just to introduce myself first of all. So I'm Sue Jones, Director of Social Care for the Institute of Health and Social Care Management. And obviously, because I'm Director of Social Care, my remit is social care, but me and John work together. We know it is absolutely essential for both health and social care to work together. And I think that's a really critical point here. You know, there is so much going on within both health and social care. So it's really important that we are able to talk to one another, communicate with one another on a level playing field. Out. It's got a doggy there, I think. I'm just going to find that. And then I'm going to start sharing my screen. And then I'm going to start to go through what we're going to do first of all is just go through what the learning objectives are going to be from this session, which I think is really important. And then I'm going to go through some of the theory that sits behind it, and give you some of the, these, I suppose I call them hooks, you can hook onto, that you can hopefully just pull down whenever you need it. But today is definitely about how to build internal and external relationships. As I say, this is about building relationships. So it would be absolutely fantastic if you could be interactive. I know that that can be sometimes quite hard. Sometimes if you're in a noisy environment, then that can be quite challenging. But please do shout out, come and have a chat with us. What we're going to do is we're recording this session, and we're going to go through the whole session. But once we've done that, we're going to stop recording. I'm going to be here for a little while afterwards. If anybody's got any questions or any specific things that you would like me to target, then I'm very happy to stay on here and go through that with you. So first of all, what are we going to come away with? Hopefully you'll be coming away with being able to understand how to connect with others confidently in different types of situations, because that's definitely a challenge for quite a number of us. Learn skills that will enable you to understand different perspectives and viewpoints, which I think can also be a challenge, and be able to communicate effectively and confidently, even in difficult situations, which again, I know can be a bit of a challenge. So we talk about this slide quite a lot. And if anybody's come to, I'm sure you might have seen it. If you've seen this before, you've seen the zookeeper, if you could just put yes in the chat. If you haven't seen it before, if you could put no, that would be great. But whether you've seen it or whether you haven't, it is really important to understand the context in this specifically relating to building relationships, because we are all different. So I'm going to go through, there's quite a few people who haven't heard of this before, so I'm going to go through this. So this is Nigel Risner's The Zookeeper. And it's really giving you an idea. I'm a psychologist, and I really don't like psychometrics for putting people in boxes. But what I do think they're really useful for is to give you an understanding of yourself and others. And this is in the context of what we are going to be looking at today. So there's four animals here, as you can see. So the person that is a lion, they can be, generally they're very confident people. They've got a presence when they go in the room. They're really they're extroverts. They're very fast-pacing thought processes, very much focused on the task in mind. But perhaps what they don't really show is the ability to empathize with people, or perhaps see other people's perspectives. They see things from their own perspective quite often. Now, this doesn't mean to say that people can't learn those skills. This is about understanding who you are as a person and who other people are. So this is where the context is so important. The chimpanzee here, the monkey here, is around that. The monkeys are really sociable people. So they're real extrovert, again, quite fast-paced in their thinking. They are definitely people focused. They love the life and soul of the party. People love them. People gravitate to them. They're quite charming quite often. So those are the monkeys. However, what monkeys might not be able to do is don't give monkeys something like a really long task to do, or a task that requires quite a lot of detailed analysis. That's not an area that the monkey thrives in. Then we've got the dolphin, and they're the peacekeepers. They're the ones who are really people focused. They're the people who are real harmonizers within a team. So they really love harmony, and they're really great team players. However, what they don't necessarily thrive in is conflict. And again, this isn't about saying people can't do it. This is about understanding the people so you can give them the skills so they feel confident in tackling areas that they don't necessarily, is not necessarily a strength. Then we've got the elephant, and the elephant is very task focused. They're not necessarily people focused, and they love the detail. They absolutely thrive in the detail. So give the elephant a task to do, and they will do it really, really well. However, don't get them to, start to take part in lots of fun games when you're in a social environment. That's not something that they will really thrive in. So when you're thinking about yourself, and I would just really like to know for the people who, especially ones who haven't done it, but for all of you, so who would class themselves as the lion within this section? Who would class themselves as a lion? You just put lion in the chat if you think you're a lion. No lions. Got to be a lion. Got to be a couple of lions, surely. Okay, so who are the monkeys? Who would consider themselves a monkey as far as this is concerned? Lion some of the time, yeah, monkey. Oh, right, yeah. Yes, I get it. Gosh, it took me a while. Being slow today. Yeah, that's good. Cross between a monkey and a dolphin. Okay. So who are the dolphins? Who are the harmonizers? Monkeys and dolphins. And who would see themselves as an elephant? The elephant in the room, really great at those detailed tasks. An elephant, okay. And, in reality, we tend to cross three of those. So you might be a cross between an elephant, a lion, and a monkey. You could be a cross between a monkey, dolphin, and an elephant. So we do tend to straddle three of those, but you will tend to have a dominant style. My style is a dolphin. I am an introvert, and it's not something that I particularly thrive in. However, when I ran my own business, I knew I had to go out and socialize. I had to go out and network. So next question for you is, when you're thinking about going out into the wider community and actually going into a room full of people and talking to people, I'd just like to know between them is who would feel confident to actually go in to a room full of people and speak to them. Who in this group would feel completely confident going into a room and feeling confident to go and talk to people? Okay, so they're the monkeys, I would imagine. Yeah, it depends on the situation. Yes, it can. Yeah, it depends who you've got in the room. People who do. And who would absolutely say that is not something I ever want to do. Who would say, I don't want to go out. I don't want to go into that room and I don't want to make those connections. I would find it very difficult and I'd find it a challenge to go into a room and talk to people. Yeah, that's a really good strategy. Really good strategy there. Try to spot someone if they're on their own and start there. And do you know what? That's exactly what I used to do. Go and spot somebody and strike up a conversation with them. Absolutely. And we will start to go through what the strategies you have, what you can put in place. Yeah. And quite often, and it's just recognizing if you're, whether you're introvert or extrovert, extroverts find this easy. They love it. They actually thrive on it. But if you are more introverted, it's just recognizing that you need to prepare for it. You need to go and really, right, okay, this situation is coming up. What am I going to do? What is the strategy? What does success look like for you? Is it to go and speak to one or two key people? Think about who is actually going into that session and what you want to achieve from it. So starting from that point of view. And it's also recognizing that, that when you go out of your comfort zone, you then go into the fear zone. And that can be, it does lead, it can mean that you've got a lack of self-confidence. It can just whether you think to yourself, can I actually do this? And it can feel scary. It really can. But once you've done it, you really feel so great because you're going into that learning zone. So you're learning new things, and then you go into this growth zone. But it always starts, as humans, we tend to do what we've always done because it feels comfortable. So when you're having to do something new, whether that means building external relationships or building internal relationships, there is still that fear of the unknown, because if you haven't tried it before, or you've tried it a couple of times and it's not worked, and you've gone back from the fear zone to the comfort zone, that can feel quite hard. But as I say, today is all about learning those strategies that enable you to do that. So let's start with some basics. So it's first of all to realize is that we all have judgments and biases. So whenever we're meeting people, working with people, especially people that we've never worked with before, we all have judgments and biases, and also other people have judgments and biases. And it's really trying to meet people where they're at. So how do you meet people where they're at? How do you, what do you actually know about a certain person? Because quite frankly, quite often we know nothing. There's always the capacity to ask open questions and to really find out, really understand the person. But it's understanding that whatever status this is, you will have your own judgments and biases towards it and towards other people. In terms, I'm just going to go through how to build rapport, first of all, because I think this is a really important start, is that really thinking about when you're showing up, when you're turning up at a meeting, either an internal or an external meeting, it's making sure that you are very aware of who you are as a person and how you're showing up. So what is your body language? What does that look like? If you were to be an observer in the room and they were to look at your body language, what would they be saying about it? Would they be saying it's open and it's friendly? Would they say, that person looks a little bit frightening, I'm not sure I want to go and talk to that person? It's making sure that you are looking friendly. Unfortunately, sometimes I really have a very expressive face, and if I need to be careful sometimes, is to make sure that my face is friendly as I'm walking in a room. I'm really trying hard with that. So it's just being very aware of self. Also, when you're starting that conversation, it's really thinking about what is that conversation? How did it start? And noticing how they talk. Are they talking quite fast? What is their tone of voice? Really thinking about how are they speaking quickly? And are you going to match it, or do you need to lead this conversation? Are they feeling, perhaps they're a little bit hesitant? Are you thinking, okay, well, I need to step in here and I need to lead this conversation? So thinking about that pacing and leading. Then it's matching and mirroring, and matching and mirroring is really ingrained in neuro-linguistic programming, NLP. And what we do when we connect with somebody on a subconscious level, what we do is we tend to match and mirror what they are doing in terms of their body language and how they're positioning themselves. So just notice what they're doing, notice what the other person is doing, because there are little things that you can do. If you sat on a chair and they're sat on a chair and they cross their legs, if you cross their legs, it just helps subconsciously to build that rapport. So if they're, if they're reflecting on something, again, really demonstrate, listen to what they're, notice what they're doing, and then match and mirror what you can. Don't make it obvious. Really good to try this out on family members, first of all. I would definitely encourage you to do that, because it makes a difference. And it certainly does work. It's something that myself and my husband, we do very naturally, is match and mirror. And I quite often find myself, and we are completely matching and mirroring our body language when we go out to the pub. Next one is active listening, and active listening is a key part to build those relationships. So actively listening, when you do actively listen, this is because people will know whether you're actively listening or not. Quite often what we do when we are listening is thinking about the question that we're about to ask. So you'll hear something while somebody is talking, and then you'll start to think about the question that you're going to ask them next. That's not active listening, and people will know whether you're actively listening or not. So being very aware when you're actively listening, this is about focusing on the person. So trying not to think about the question, because you can always take time to reflect and think about the question after you've finished listening. And you can fill the gap into just, oh gosh, that's really interesting with what you've just said then. And then you can start to think about the question you're going to ask. So give them time and space to do that. Definitely ask open questions. And this is an absolute key thing for introverts. When you ask open questions, it really stops the need for you to talk. So really being inquisitive and, seeking what they're thinking, finding out more about them by asking open questions can really help build that rapport. And then also paraphrase. So when they've said something to you, just acknowledge what they've said. I thought, oh gosh, that's really interesting. So start to really think about what they just said, and try and think about what would that look like? What would that sentence, what could you actually say to make them or demonstrate that you've actually understood what they've just said? And this really helps for team building as well. So the next one is what Dale Carnegie says. And if anybody has read How to Win Friends and Influence People, this is from that book. And he's very much a person who wrote this book, and he is definitely, oh good, you've got that one, thank you. So yeah, definitely you need to become genuinely interested in other people, and as I say, you can't feign this, you can't fake it. You have to be genuinely interested in other people. Smile makes such a massive difference. When you do smile at somebody, remember that a person's name to that person is the sweetest and most important sound in any language, and it's really important to know the other person's name and to repeat the other person's name. So right at the outset, if you're doing introductions to people, making sure that you remember the name. And the best way to do that is to say it as soon as they've said it, you say their name, and that will enable you to remember it. Be a good listener. Absolutely. We talked about active listening. And then also talk in terms of the other person's interests. Find out what interests them. So this is where the open questions really come into their own. Okay, anybody got any questions? So we're going to go on to persuasive techniques. when you want to connect with somebody, and it's really good to do that, is to connect with them on an emotional level. So what do you actually know about the other person? And how are you actually going to position yourselves in a way that would allow them to connect with you emotionally? So when you're going out networking, what's the first sentence that you're going to say? When you're going out and meeting people, in external providers, what is the first thing that's going to say? And I know quite a few of you are wanting to make those connections with external providers and build those relationships. How are you going to connect with them on an emotional level? What is that first sentence going to be? And I'll just give you an example. When I go out and meet people, I talk about what I'm passionate about. And, for me, I will start with, well, that's what drives me is that I won't care to be seen as a profession that people aspire to work in and be part of. And because it's an emotional, and because people generally, the people that I talk to, have that common interest, that is something that will connect with them on an emotional level. So what is that sentence going to be like? What's that first sentence? It's so important to create that impression that you want to connect with them on an emotional level. Definitely about self-awareness. So I just clicked on that slide. Self-awareness, making sure that we talked about it, making sure your body language is open, it's friendly, thinking about your tone of voice. Find that common ground. So when you're trying to make connections with, it could be ICBs, it could be district nurses, whatever. What are you both? Where's your common goals there? What are you both trying to achieve? And try and find out from them and ask them, what would help you? What could I do that would help you? Or what is there anything that you need to know from me that would enable you to work better? Or how can we work better together? What are your thoughts around that? Definitely use a compassionate style, and we go through the compassionate, if you've attended one of John's sessions on compassionate leadership, he would have gone through this: attend, understand, empathy, and help. So it's always this, first of all, when you attend to somebody, you really listen to them, you really listen to what they're saying. You then go and really understand it from their perspective, meet that person where they're at, and also empathize, which means putting yourself in their shoes, because quite often we have our own agenda. But when you actually turn the table and turn those perspectives, which we're just going to go into, when you turn that perspective and see things from their perspective, it really helps to create that empathy and then help. And help doesn't mean doing it for people. It means, what can you do to actually enable them, to point them in the right direction, or give them some sort of assistance as where they can go next, or what you can do together. So those are the persuasive techniques. And I said I would go through and talk about perspectives. And this is so true when we're trying to, especially when health and social care are trying to work together. There's barriers, of course, there's barriers, but it's also really seeing people's truths, what they understand to be the truth, because we're not wrong. It's just a different perspective. And there's a great cartoon drawing here. Everything we hear is an opinion, not a fact. Everything we see is a perspective, not the truth. So you can see here, you've got one that says 4 and one that says 3. They're both right. It's just a different perspective. And really understanding that viewpoint, because, the more you find out about the other person, the better and the easier it is for everybody. So I'm just this is something that can really help this in terms of, especially with internal teams, and if you've got challenges, is really making people see the other perspective. And I did this as a session. It was a coaching session, an in-person coaching session. It was there was quite a few people in the room. and we go through a scenarios base. And this particular scenario was just to go through some feedback session on how to manage quite a difficult team player. So what we did is I sat in one chair and they sat in another chair, and we had a conversation. And it was only by having those conversations with their point of view and then my point of view, did they actually able to reflect and see both parts. So this is a really key thing to do. So if you've got a challenge, if you've got somebody within the organization, and you can do this yourselves, you know, see things first of all from that first person perspective. So that is seeing the situation through the first person's eyes. Then you sit in the second chair, and sometimes it really helps to put 3 chairs in a room to do this. If you've got conflict within the team, or you've got somebody really trying to see or having difficulty seeing another person's perspective, the second person perspective is then standing in your shoes. So how does that person feel? How does the other person feel? And then you can see here we've got the observer, the first person and the second person, and then seeing it from the observer's perspective. So that exercise in itself can really, really help. Anybody got any thoughts on that? Okay, so those were the basics, the hooks to hook on, if you like. But now we are going to go through and first of all, think about building those internal relationships. So the people who are on the call today, thinking about those internal relationships. Out on there. So leading compassionate teams. So we've just gone through the attending, understanding, empathizing and helping, and applying that within the team. So what I'd like you to do is think about, so group discussion, please come on and chat. It is about building relationships. So the people who have said that they want some help with this, please do come on and chat. So in terms of what do you know about your team? You know, what do you really know about your team? I mean, I'm really interested to know, do you have really detailed information about each member of the team? Or is there areas of the team that you would like to understand more about?
So we just talk, or you pay 100 or something?
No, you can talk in, put your hand up, whichever. Please do come on.
For me, I think it's not the office team. I think I know the office team quite well because most care organizations are fairly small. So you do know the office team well. What you don't know is the carers, the care assistants. For us, we do home care. So
yeah,
it's knowing the carers that's difficult bit, because you only see them once or twice a month, for supervision or something like that, or team meetings. You don't see them regular enough to get to know people.
Okay. So how do you get to know them better?
Mm-hmm.
What you know, in terms of, so I'm assuming you have supervisors within the team?
Yes. Yeah.
So what do they know about their team?
Well, you obviously don't know a lot more than me. Yeah, I mean, what we try to do is when somebody first starts, we have weekly meetings with them. So the supervisor will meet them every single week for the first 12 weeks. So the idea there is to get to know them during those first initial time when somebody's new to the organization. So they get to know us, and we get to know, the supervisor gets to know them, and they get to know the supervisor and what's expected. So that's what we kind of introduced to kind of help us bridge that gap. And then monthly supervisions and team meetings. And we try to have social events, but they're very sporadic. Is when you get around to organizing them, when everybody's busy, when you think on the slip.
And you know, what would good look like for you? What do you want to achieve? You know, this is about what are the goals and objectives for you?
Mm.
When you say you want to get to know them better, what would you like from knowing them better?
But for us, for me as the owner, it's more about getting everybody having like a culture that everybody kind of buys into. So we're all kind of doing things in the same way. And I guess that's where the struggle is for me in terms of our organizational culture and trying to get this in the same way. Especially when we've got, like I said, we've got about 15 office staff and about 110 carers. And so about how do you get everybody going in the same direction?
Okay, so what has worked well, and again, just putting the idea out there, is to set up a care community, so like a care team. So you appoint carers within your organization and get them to attend meetings with you that would actually, obviously these carers, you want them to be the ones that, you know, you really see those as that demonstrate the culture that you're trying to create, the really good examples, and you know, they're the people that you really want to have in those teams, and meet with those people. So that it's more like the carers representatives.
Yeah. We so I do, in the sense that I go to every kind of refresher training we have. I go and have a chat with them, with the carers, and ask if there's any issues, concerns, those kind of things. And when people first start, I do about an hour, or half an hour to 45 minutes about our values and our goals and objectives with them as well. And every team meeting I go and just sit in with and have a Q&A with the carers. So we do that kind of stuff. We have been thinking about having, we're going to call them, first we're going to call them mentors, and then we thought, no, that doesn't sound right. Then I think we're going to call them care ambassadors. I know there's like a care ambassador scheme external, but we're talking about just internally within our, so like those people you said, the people that you would want to be the role models, I guess, for the rest of the people, and do additional training with those.
And I would definitely do that, because, you know, the problem is, and again with home care, is that, you know, when you do have a lot of people that don't have that day-to-day contact with you, it's really hard to get that, you know, to get people, and for you to get that feedback as well, because you need that feedback, don't you? But definitely, you know, when you're trying to build teams, is really understand who you've got in your team, but also have a set of goals and objectives that team really understand and are all aiming for. You know, they're all moving in the same direction. If you don't have those goals and objectives, which should be aligned to the values of the team, you know, creating those team values, making sure that the language is used that is consistent and is, again, aligned to the values. So if you're, you know, there's a great quote, you know, the behavior you walk by is the behavior that you promote. So nipping in the bud and being confident to nip any sort of behavior or comments in the bud before they escalate, and making sure that that is consistent across the board. Communication is an issue completely. You know, we know communication is the biggest issue within any company. It doesn't matter whether it's health and social care. Within any company, communication is generally the number one problem that companies face, because we all, funnily enough, we all interpret communication very differently. And then, of course, having those processes in place that would enable them to really have that structure, but also creates the safety as well, and that structure to it. Anybody else who is trying to lead teams at the moment? So that's the compassionate teams. I'm going to go through, and then we'll do another exercise afterwards in a moment. But this is a really interesting thought. Okay, so there's a great quote here from Abraham Lincoln, I don't like that man. I must get to know him better. And, you know, we tend to have relationships with people that are like us. So if there are people within your team that are not like you, then go and get to know them better. You know, this is a really key important thing for you to do to actually enable you to build that team effectively. So who among we do we find it easier or more difficult to interact with? To what extent do we practice being present with those we find more difficult? Because we gravitate, as I say, we gravitate towards the easy rather than the difficult. It's just what we do as humans, but just really think about that and take steps to go and get to know those people better. And then team dynamics is obviously, we just went through all of this with regards to yourselves, but what about who you've got in your team? You know, who are the extroverts, who are the introverts, who are the task focused, who are the people focused? Are there any needs? You know, is there that there is always a reason for behavior, whether that's good behavior or bad behavior, there is always a reason for it. So if there is a behavior that is being displayed, then go and find out, you know, go and find out what is causing that problem. Is it just a case of, you know, a dolphin trying to talk to a lion and it's not going very well? So how can you help them understand each of those perspectives? There is lots of reasons for that. And also, when there is conflict, we have different attitudes towards how we deal with that conflict. You know, a lion will tend to, if you have to raise an issue with a lion, the lion will want to take away the threat and it'll attack the threat. The monkey will actually make friends with the threat. The dolphin might get a little bit emotional when it comes to the threat and react emotionally. And the elephant will want to know all the details as to why that a threat has occurred. So being mindful of how people are going to react would be, you know, really good for you to actually set out there and prepare for. Now, there is also Tutman's team stages of development. And again, this is, I don't know if people have started to lead new teams or older teams, you know, that if they're new teams, it tends to be a little bit easier. But when you've come in and you've come to lead a team and they've already formed, that can be quite difficult. And you still need to go through this process. So when you form teams for the first time, when they're forming, everybody tends to be a little bit polite and not really step out of line. And that goes on for a bit. And then you go into the storming mode. And the storming is where conflict can happen and, you know, disagreements can occur. And you've really got to build that trust at this stage. You've really got to really iron out any of those challenges in this storming phase for it to move to the norming stage. And the norming stage is where people start to feel a little bit more, they feel like they can trust the team a little bit more, you know, and start to build those relationships. And it's only once they've gone through that they can then go into the performing stage. So just thinking about different types of conflict, and I'm just going to summarize this. So there's this is about compassionately managing conflict. There's different types of conflict. Generally, most conflict happens at the beginning is either through a task that's not been completed. It could be a process that's not been started or followed, or it could be the status, you know, sort of thinking, well, that wasn't my job, or I didn't need to do that, you know, is that sort of level of responsibilities. But all of those three can lead to this interpersonal relationships conflict issue, because it generally means that one of those three things hasn't been dealt with then. And this is why it is so important to deal with conflict as and when it happens and nipping it in the bud. Really critical to do that. And of course, managing conflict, manage difficulties quickly, positively, openly, courageously, and ethically. I'm conscious that this is the time is moving on. So I just wanted, the group discussion was, you have noticed that your team isn't as unified as you would like, and there have been instances in team meetings where some voices have been louder than others. A team meeting is booked in next week, and you want to address that, and you want to address this. What would your objectives be? What steps will you take, and what plan would you put in place? Anybody want to take a guess on that? Your objectives be? Anne?
Hi. I think my objective would be to reflect back to the team how things look or feel, and ask them about what would make things better. Now, based on the animal theory, some people aren't going to speak up and some are. You might end up that the loud voices take over again. So I think you might go back to ground rules a bit about everybody's opinion is valid, and speak, listen, and don't interrupt and things like that potentially. And revisit. In our organisation, we've got a very strong ethos about kindness. So you go back to your team objectives or your team's purpose. Why are we all here? What is it about? We're nursing services. So it's coming back to that. And but actually thinking, I think, because I always think about what is it in the team meetings that have caused this? Is there anything wrong with the structure? Are people involved in the agenda? Are they not? Is it an inclusive process? And sort of go right back to basics, I think, to try and make things more inclusive.
Absolutely. Yeah. And thank you for those comments.
I would take cake as well.
Yeah. Cake is good. Cake, chocolate biscuits, anything like that is definitely a good plan. 100%. So yes, it's all of those things. I am going to put something in the chat here. This is I don't know if anybody would find that useful. It's actually a copy of a team charter template. So if you've got a team at the moment that you're trying to build, it's always good to align the vision. So get people all aligned and make those ground rules. So there's a template there. Please do feel free, download it, do whatever you need to. If anybody needs a PDF, I don't know whether you can download it, I put it on the website. But if anybody needs an editable PDF, I can send that to you as well. But absolutely, this is about really listening, understanding, finding that common ground, making sure that people feel heard, and also getting everybody's viewpoints as well, but also be comfortable with that conflict. This is really important. If there is conflict, is say, look, we all need to be aligned here. And no matter what, we've got to all be working on going in the same direction. If we need conflict to do that and challenge each other's views, that's absolutely fine. This is a safe space to do that. But let's talk about it and let's find that common ground. Because people need to feel safe to speak out, don't they? They need to feel safe to have those conversations without necessarily being challenged in an aggressive way. So if you've got people who are perhaps a little bit more challenging, coach them on how to deal or how to ask questions and understand how they actually come across that would enable other people to feel psychologically safe. And also on the other side is encouraging people who are quieter to be confident to speak out as well. So there's lots to think about there. So thank you. Yeah, take time to evaluate expectations. Absolutely. Outside of the team meetings, yeah, absolutely. Go through the 3 chairs perspectives. Again, that can really help. Okay, so I hope that was useful. That's on the team discussion. So now we're going to go on to building external relationships. And obviously we've gone through quite a few things in terms of planning and what you can do to build rapport, etc. And understanding people. But when you are building relationships across boundaries, I just want you to consider some three things here. Is why are you building the relationship? You know, what is your purpose and objective for doing that? I'm really making it clear for you to understand what you want to achieve. Next one is, how will you achieve it and what steps will you take? And are there any barriers to doing it? So is there a relationship issue? You know, if you've got somebody that you're trying to make relationships, trying to build relationships with you, well, get to know them better. Try and connect with them. Have that, you know, go and have a coffee and a piece of cake with them if need be. Go and meet up and just have that. Just say, I want to have I'd love to just chat. If that's okay, there's no plan here, there's no agenda. I just want to find out a little bit more about what you do, how you do it, what the challenges that you're facing at the moment, because I think if I found that out, it would help me to understand a little bit better. Start from that point of view. Just be genuinely interested in the other person. Then what will you do, you know, in terms of afterwards? Are you going to make a plan? Are you going to measure that outcome? You know, what would it take to change that relationship? And I know, just to give you an example, we had one of our fabulous care managers who she'd recently taken over. She'd already operated very successfully in one area, and then she moved into another area. And she had to build relationships all over again. And she came across, I think it was a social worker who hadn't spoken to the registered manager before, and it was challenging. And it was really interesting how she dealt with it, because what she did was take a step back and really started to find out made no judgments about this person at all. Even though she felt quite strongly at the time, she really took a step back to find out more about this person. And in the end, that relationship really formed well. So sometimes it is just taking a step back can really help. So, group discussion. You're a registered manager and you would like to build relationships. I mean, you could be, it doesn't matter whether you're a registered manager, that's not applicable here. You could be any manager and you would like to build relationships with social workers and district nurses that cover your area. What's your objective going to be? How will you make contact? What language will you use? And how will you build rapport? And again, that's just a group. Put those questions out there. What do you think? Those people who said they wanted to build relationships with external teams, what would you do? How will you make contact? Have you tried making contact and you've not been successful and you'd like some help with that? Any thoughts? So those people who said they wanted to build relationships with external people. Victoria, aye.
Yeah, I mean, I go and visit them, go and see them in their workplace, and I think that really helps understand the environment that they're working in, that can show the pressure that they're working under. And I think it shows them that you care, that the fact you've taken time, which isn't a burden, to go and visit them, but then follow that up as well. Because I think there's one thing visiting and then saying goodbye and never seeing them again. There's another thing, visiting and arranging a follow-up visit or call, and taking on board what has been said to you. So I've found that has helped in my new role, not so new now, but very much, because you become an actual person, not just a face on a screen that you can tune out from.
Yeah, absolutely. And it is this, most people want to connect with others. You know, we're all, it's really tough, isn't it? You know, if you start from the viewpoint, is that saying to people, it's really challenging at the moment. I'd really like to understand what your challenges are, see if there's anything that we can do to perhaps collaborate, work together, just to make our lives a little bit easier. How does that sound? You know, can we come and have a cup of tea, share, you know, share, as you say, go and visit them in their place of work. Absolutely. Thank you, Victoria, for that. Just looking through the chat. Yeah, collaborative approach, bringing everyone together. Find out which teams are out there under leads, visit, use some of the key drivers to connect with each other. And again, remember, this is about awareness of self. This is about what language you're going to use, the tone of voice you're going to use. Remember all the things about building rapport. Those are the key elements as far as that is concerned. And there is, as I say, there's always a reason. Sometimes, you know, you can have those conversations with people, they'll phone you up and you think, well, they were really awful to me. Sometimes you just have to put that aside, don't you? And then take extra care to go and make contact with those people again. Yeah, find out mutual needs, absolutely, and see how you can benefit another. Okay. So that was that discussion. So I would just end on this slide before we go into questions and we'll stop recording, is really thinking about what you're aiming for. This is from The Power of the Other by Dr. Henry Cloud. And he talks about relationships, corners of relationships. And you've got, first one is corner one, no connection. If you've got no connection with the other person, but you need to build those relationships, you need to go and get to know them better. So it's really making those efforts to go and make those connections. If there is a bad connection or a toxic connection, I would definitely be not, if they're part of your team, internal team, I would definitely be trying to get them out of the business as quickly as possible, because they do untold damage. As I say, remember, the behavior permit or walk by is the behavior promote. So if you let things happen, that's not a great place to be at all. The corner three connection is the fake connection, and there's a lot of people who operate in that fake connection space. And this is where psychological safety can, it's a real issue, because what is happening is, if there's a fake connection, everybody's saying, people are saying, the person is saying things to you and they're saying all the right things, but they're not actually the actions, or you know that there's different conversations that are happening once you stop speaking to them. So my advice would definitely be address that by having those one-to-ones with them, just explaining, you know, I just feel that there's something not quite right with this relationship. And I'd really like us to have a real connection. I feel that I would like you to feel that you can trust me, and equally I feel like I need to trust you as well, so we can work much better together. So really making sure that you're drawing everything out from that fake connection to try and move it into this real connection space. So the corner four is absolutely where you should be aiming for. So the real connection is they trust you, you trust them, you feel that you can have open and honest conversations with them, you know, you trust them implicitly, they will back you up, and you will back them up. So that's really where you're trying to get to. So any questions, thoughts or comments? I think